Welcome to Her Fantasy Football, where the three of us sisters go matchup by matchup to help you set your lineups. It's playoffs, people.
Yeah!
Woo! Make sure to hop
Congrats!
over and check us out at herfantasyfootball.com for our rankings, posts, and much more. We're also on iTunes, Stitcher, ESPNW. You can always ask us questions on Twitter at HerFantasyFB and on Facebook /HerFantasyFootball. I'm your host, Courtney Kirby.
And I'm Ashley Williams.
And I'm Brandon Lee.
Woohoo! Week 15.
Oh.
The time has come, you guys.
Playoffs.
I know you guys are all excited. Ashley and I are playing each other in the first week of playoffs in our family league.
Yep.
Yep. Put your bets in now. Who's going to win?
Can I beat you back-to-back weeks? Can I do it?
Can you do it? I don't
My
doubt
team
it.
just went off last week. It went off. I almost felt bad for you, Courtney. I was like, this is the best week I've ever had. Brutal.
No, that's what I was like. Hopefully, Le'Veon Bell is, had enough. He's exhausted, and he just doesn't want to play next week.
Yeah,
I don't get it all out now, you guys. This game doesn't matter for me. Just get it all out now.
Well, I'm all in on those Steelers. They gotta do well, or I don't do well.
It's true, you really are. But they've been doing well, so you're doing just fine.
I won in one of my playoffs by less than 2 points, and the guy had Antonio Gates and Randall Cobb left, and I thought I was cooked. Ends up, I was okay.
Hey.
Yeah. To be fair, I had the second highest score out of everyone in the league, and this is the only league I have not won. So this is my moment.
It's your moment.
So you got two more games left then, or is next week the
yeah.
final? Okay. Well, good luck, Brandon. You're gonna do well. I can feel it.
Thank you. I missed the family league, and I think the people out there will understand my feelings here. My 3 wide receivers were Demaryius Thomas, Torrey Smith, and DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
Brutal.
You can't win like that, people. You can't win like that.
No, you can't. And then you had Tannehill. He was worthless.
Tannehill.
You had the worst game of this season by anybody by far, and it all happened in one game. It was so crazy. It was and it was for the playoffs. It was so nuts.
It was of epic proportions, and I could not stop the bleeding. It was just sitting there, and I needed to win to get in. So I'm not in the Family League 1, but I'm in 6 of 9. So.
I know. Chris sent me a text. He goes, I beat Brandon. I'm in. She's out. Please relay this to her in case she missed it. Sure, she was watching and was aware.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Sometimes, who would tell you to sit Demaryius Thomas?
No.
Who?
Probably the same person told you to set Peyton Manning.
Oh. You'll have your moment, actually. You'll have your moments. Let's get into the games, you guys. We're going to answer some of your social media questions throughout the night or day, depending on when you're listening to this. Well, let's get straight into Thursday night. Arizona Cardinals 10-3, St. Louis Rams 6-7. Those Cardinals, hey defense, still amazing. Had another double-digit performance. That was their 5th double-digit game in the last 6 games. I'll take it. And the Rams happened to give up the 3rd best fantasy points to defenses. So they are the sure bet in Arizona. I'm into them. Everybody else, I'm a little iffy. Iffy, to say the least. Right now they got a running back. God only knows what's going on. I mean, it was really between Grice and Taylor people were picking up, and then Williams just blew it up. Williams is still not declared the starter, but God knows that, he's got to be the main hand there. Either way that it goes, the Rams give up the 7th fewest fantasy points to running backs, so none of them are my favorite this week, you guys. Don't stream them. I'm not into them. If you're going to pick one, I guess it's Williams, but try not to do it. Also on the bench is Drew Stanton and John Carlson per usual. In my gut calls, I wanted to say this. Kickers do matter, guys. We're going to start off at the top of the show. Mr. Chandler Catanzaro something like that. He has missed
pretty good.
Thanks, Brandon. He's missed 4 of his last 9 attempts, including 2 last week against the Chiefs. Now, luckily for the Cardinals, they still won. And he still had 10 fantasy points, you guys. That's not bad, but I don't want you to panic. He is a rookie kicker, and he made his first 17 field goals in the NFL. So he's okay. The coaches have confidence in him. I'm still confident that you're going to play this guy. The wide receivers, Larry Fitzgerald is still questionable. He's going to play, but how much? Michael Floyd, John Brown, Jaron Brown. I would say none of them are more than a flex at this point with Staten throwing the ball. One of them is going to get in the end zone. I can't tell you who. They're all a little too risky for me. And that's all for the Cardinals.
It's all for the Cardinals. Don't you love it how running backs can completely suck it, but a kicker misses like 3 field goals and they're dropped from the team?
I know.
It's so interesting to me because it's not like there's a plethora of kickers out there to choose from.
No.
Anyway.
The Broncos know that.
Right? I mean, they brought back McManus just to actually do kickoffs, but crazy. Anyway, to the Rams. They're kind of coming on a little bit. They're an interesting team for me, the Rams.
Their defense.
Their defense is legit. I know I've got them for sure with the defense. You have to play them. Tavon Austin in my gut call section. So I want to make it very clear that I'm not saying that you should consider Austin, as he's simply just not targeted enough. But this makes it 3 weeks in a row now that he's scored. So if you need a flyer, then why not? You know?
Yeah.
It's a deep why not, but, you know, why not? Jared Cook. So you can never get too attached to your tight ends in the land of fantasy. So unless you got Gronk, right? Unless you got Gronk this year, you can get attached. But otherwise, you need to play the hot hand. And by hot hand, I mean lukewarm hand, because we're talking about tight ends here. But
yeah,
Jared Cook was the highest scoring tight end this week. Last week. And he has another favorable matchup this week with the Cardinals, who do give up the 7th most points to tight ends. So Cook is someone you should consider. Bench, Kenny Britt, you know it. Trey Mason is one I also want to talk about here. So unless you're in like a real big pinch, I think you should stay away from Trey Mason this week. Last week against the Redskins was kind of a tough one. He's only able to muster up 66 yards off 20 attempts, and he wasn't able to find the end zone. So this week will be even more rough as the Cardinals give up the 2nd fewest points to running backs. So I just don't feel confident you should put your playoff hopes and wishes and dreams in Trey Mason's hands against the Cardinals, personally. Stedman Bailey, he's one of those guys that, you hate the fact that you're like, oh, he's doing so well, all this hype is around him, and then you actually say, okay, I'm going to play him, and then he sucks it. It's the name of the game. So he only had 2 balls for 47 yards last week. It's just, you can't do it, guys. You cannot possibly put your playoffs in his hands. Don't do it. So
you're talking about tight ends, and Casey Kasem, one of our favorites. She's in 4 leagues, and she's owned all of these tight ends. Jimmy Graham, Greg Olsen, Dwayne Allen, Dennis Pitta, Michael Rivera, Kobe Fleener, Kyle Rudolph, Jordan Cameron, Zach Ertz, Tim Wright, Jordan Reed, Gilmore, and Owen Daniels. I can't even remember Gilmore's first name. Because it's a nightmare out there, people. It's a nightmare.
You're like living on the waiver wire. You're living on it.
I like it.
She tweets me because, I hate tight ends, so she tweets me like every day, being like, I hate them.
They're the worst, and I don't blame her for that.
Nope.
That's a good time there.
Rocket Casey.
So what is there a question? Does she have a tight end? Who is she sticking with this week?
Oh, I think she's just gonna. I think she's retired tight ends.
I think she's probably forcing the fact that they're brutal.
I do have a question though. I'm gonna start this way. You're up at YURUP_ says thanks for your help this season. You're welcome. They're 12-2. Yay!
Hey, yeah, nice.
The question is Wilson or Flacco?
I like Flacco this week a lot. I got him as a must start. I'm into Flacco.
Okay.
I mean, Flacco, wacko, he's kind of unreliable, but I am into him. I'm going for it. Flacco.
I have a hard time ever saying Russell Wilson. Who are the Seahawks playing?
They're playing San Francisco. I think it's Russell
San Francisco's
Wilson
really bad. Yeah, I'd probably say
because
Russell.
they're terrible, and he was really good against them on Thanksgiving. Do you remember Thanksgiving? Part 2
He was
is
really
this
good.
Sunday.
Yeah, and he's at least he's at least consistent. You get you in the mid-teens, whereas Flacco, I'm not sure I'd trust my playoff hope on that.
But I like
I don't-
both of them this week, and that's a legitimate
Yeah.
question, which some weeks it's not. So that's kind of cool. Because Joe Flacco's
Flacco
going up
Wilson.
against Jacksonville, so. But I don't know. San Francisco. I don't know.
I think Jacksonville's better than San Francisco. Bold statement of
I do
the
too.
day. Bold statement.
Offensively, which is even sadder, I would say yes. But defensively, San Francisco can pull out some good defensive games.
Oh, absolutely.
Jacksonville, but I'm saying, like, San Fran might not win it on the offense, but their defense can get it done. So, but you're right. Russell Wilson will come up and play. They love playing each other. It's a thing. I'm just high on Flacco this week. So,
Thanks
All
for the
right.
question.
Thanks for the question. Good luck. Congratulations. Enjoy playoffs. Let's get to the Sunday morning matchups. Pittsburgh Steelers 8-5. Atlanta Falcons 5-7.
Both of my teams. Well, clearly, since I'm writing a lot of my fantasy on the Steelers, I'm going to have nothing but good things to say about them.
Throw that mojo out there, Ashley. Throw it
I'm
out.
throwing it out. Good juju for the Steelers. Sean Sweeson, kicker, he's great. He's been great all season. He's kind of been flying under the radar, but take a look at him. Le'Veon Bell, like every week, you're playing this guy. No questions asked. Same with Antonio Brown. You're playing him too. Done deal. Ben Roethlisberger. You saw what Aaron Rodgers did with the Falcons last week, and Big Ben is just as capable of the same kind of magic and actually outscored Aaron Rodgers last week, even with that game. So Big Ben is a must-play since the Falcons are very generous with their points to quarterbacks. Martavis Bryant, you are a very frustrating man, sir. Right when we thought, I don't know about this guy, you come out and boom! 109 yards off 4 catches and a touchdown. He's a big play kind of guy, and the Falcons give up big plays. So could be another solid week for him. Stick probably to your more tried and true players if you are in a situation where you actually have some really good receivers. Don't go doing something crazy like benching Jordy Nelson for Bryant.
Oh,
don't do that.
That's insane.
Don't do that. But if you're in a situation where you're like, oh, I've got Bryant and I've got Andre Johnson, go Bryant. Gut calls Heath Miller. It's not the best matchup for him, but again, like we talked about tight ends, go with the hot hand. And Heath Miller has been doing pretty well the past 3 weeks. He's
Really
averaging
good.
7.7 points.
Yeah.
So, it's not the best matchup, but Heathy. It can't hurt, right? Can't hurt. And not many other tight ends can boast 7.7 points over the last 3 weeks. So, give him a chance. Bench, absolutely nobody. You'll play in the Steelers. Let's move on to the Falcons, who surprisingly showed up. Huh?
Whoa, they made it a game.
They made it
They
a game.
made
It looked
it a
good. It was
game.
fun.
It was fun.
It was
Great
fun.
fun in a game. It was really fun.
I was a little nervous, happy like, here comes the blowout, and then they came back, which was great. So, Matt Ryan, I've got him. I play him if you got him. Ryan has been as boring as vanilla ice cream till last week, when the Falcons put up, more
I
again
see
than
what you
anticipated.
did there. Maddie,
Did I see
ice
that?
cream.
Ice cream, Maddie, ice.
I see what you did there.
You're welcome, Brandon. You're welcome.
But
he
she gets paid the big
guys.
bucks.
That's right. By big bucks, may we nothing. Anyway, but they had some big plays. And for me, that was the most encouraging part, is that it wasn't just all these little dump-offs midfield. They actually had some deep balls. They had some good plays. They had some good offensive schemes that actually, came to fruition, because they've been kind of dealing off a lot of broken plays all season, to be honest with you. So this was exciting, right? And so, to believe it or not, he is the 8th highest scoring quarterback on the season, even while being Mr. Vanilla flavoring. So you kind of got to play him. And the Steelers' defense give up the 8th most points of quarterbacks. So you can feel okay about it. And who knows? Maybe he's going to throw down a little cookies and cream flavoring for you this week.
Ooh.
I'm
nice.
hoping
I was going to say
chocolate
Rocky.
chip.
You like
Ooh,
what?
see, I was going to say Rocky Road, and then I was like, ooh, that could be a negative connotation. And I was like, maybe a little
Mhm.
salted Oreo. Again, salty could be construed the wrong way.
Mint chocolate chip. Everyone
chocolate
likes
chip.
that.
That's Ashley's favorite.
That's my
It's
favorite.
one of my jams.
It's your favorite
Yeah,
too? Oh, I like
Awesome.
cookie dough.
It
I
is
like half
good.
baked from Ben and Jerry, if we're gonna be honest.
That is delicious.
That stuff is not right.
All right. Well, let's hope that Matty Ice, Matt Ryan is half baked this week for you.
All
That's
right.
what we're hoping for.
Yep.
Steven Jackson. I also have him in my play if you got him, which, if you know me, you know I don't like Steven Jackson.
I'm going to play him this week, Ash, against you.
You're playing him. You are playing him because he's a top 20 back this year, which is a little crazy, but it's true.
Good for him.
And, he scored 4 touchdowns in the last 6 weeks, and the odds are more in your favor because, again, the Falcons are getting a little bit better. Julio's in the mix. The offense is picking up, which means they're getting towards the red zone, and this is where he's actually going to score and get you some points. So feel good about Steven Jackson. Start him. You're starting Julio Jones. He's back. He's playing great. He had a crazy good game with 259 yards, 11 catches, and a touchdown. He was crazy. Top receiver for the week, which is nuts. I will say that he was held out of practice along with Roddy
injury,
due to injuries. But more than likely, from what we're hearing, is that it's kind of more so just like the vet situation and just more precautionary. But definitely still keep your ears open as to what's going on. Same with Roddy Wright. Like I said, he was held out as well. I mean, he definitely paled in comparison to Julio's game, but he still had a really good game. Still put up Steelers secondary's average. So it's actually really possible for both these guys to have good games. Again, check your injury reports. Gut calls, Harry Douglas. Even Douglas was able to get some love from Ryan. Grant only had 2 catches for 11 yards and a touchdown. You are only considering him, I will say, if you were in a deep league. Like deep league, and you were praying to the gods for some sort of end zone look. Because otherwise you're going to cry yourself to 6 because he's going to give you like 1 point. So you gotta be in a really bad wide receiver situation. Bench, no one. I'm excited for this game.
No one. I'm going to nominate Steven Jackson for Comeback of the Year 20.
Yeah.
Good for him. Cincinnati Bengals 8-4-1 at the Cleveland Browns 7-6. Play him if you got him. AJ Green. Green has had 5 games over 10 fantasy points in the last 6 weeks since he returned from his injury, you guys. Last week he had 15 targets. Come on, 15 targets. I mean, this guy is like a target machine. He went for 224 yards and a touchdown. Wow. This week he faces off against Hayden. So it's not going to be easy.
I don't love that.
An easy ride. It's not going to be. But you're not benching AJ Green. You're not benching. This is the playoff rule, you guys. You're not benching the guys who brought you there, unless it's like crazy town injury, matchup, whatever. You just can't expect that many fantasy points. Just can't. So just temper it. 15 fantasy points is enough. He's going to get you double digits. So just be okay. 12 to 15 fantasy points. He can do it. You're not into it, Brandon? You're saying bench AJ Green?
No. Of course not. Just nervous. That's all. This is high anxiety time.
Hayden's been so legit this year, though. I mean, you can sit there and say all you want about Sherman and all the different kind of players, Peterson, but every single time Hayden shuts them down.
Well, unless you're T.Y. Hilton last week. And then all of a sudden at the end you'd wear him down and then you just like rock it. I mean, that's what I'm hoping AJ Green does. I hope that he watches T.Y. Hilton's tape and just rocks it. This is a selfish AJ Green owner. We don't need to pause for this. We can move on. I'm a selfish person, and that's what I want.
But the problem is, you're not going to not play AJ because you don't have another person on your roster that's got more upside than AJ. No. Right?
That's right. Reality. And if you can, good for you. Well drafting. But most likely you're not, and you're going to play AJ Green, guys. So, moving on. Gut calls. Jeremy Hill. Giovanni Bernard. Both backs had another not great showing last week. It was clear that the running back by committee is just not working out in Cincinnati. It's just not going to happen. So I expect them to choose one or the other, and I think it's going to be Hill with the majority of the workload this week, you guys. I expect him to be the featured back. He's been more productive. And, Cleveland's just okay against running. So I'm not upset if you guys play Jeremy Hill. I think Giovanni Bernard is no more than a really deep flex option at this point. So there's that for you. Bench warmers, Mohamed Sanu. I really like Sanu a lot, a lot. This is his 2nd game in a row with only 3 targets and 5th game in a row with less than 50 yards. It's playoffs, people. We can't be playing somebody just because we like them. It stinks. And Andy Dalton. Dalton was fabulous last week with 302 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 0 interceptions, which is bananas from Mr. Dalton.
Improvement.
It's crazy. But with that said, the last time Dalton played Cleveland, I think we all remembered, he got negative points.
Yep.
So let's not make that same mistake twice this year, you guys. Dalton
can't happen because I have Cam Newton and Andy Dalton, my only 2 options in the league. You can't pick anyone else up. So I need Dalton to do well.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, they're like, you've lost before it even started.
Sorry. Let's get to those Browns.
Okay, well, the note to start is that Brian Hoyer pulled a Kyle Orton and pretty much begged the coaching staff to pull him after 3 weeks of very, very bad football. So we've supported Hoyer and the coaches all year almost solely as a response to the ridiculous media frenzy around quote-unquote Johnny Football. But it is time to move on. Better luck with the Jets next year, Brian Hoyer.
Is that the bold statement? He's going to be the Jet?
That's my bold statement of the day. All right.
I think we all knew that if they lost, they were no longer playoff contention, they would have gone to Manziel.
Well, I think they still are.
Why not? Why not?
But he's just been playing so poorly. It's outrageous. It's
crazy.
Outrageous. So they had to. They just had to. But there is a play him if you got him, and it's Isaiah Crowell. So he's questionable with a hip injury, but he was questionable with a hip injury last week, and he was fine. He got 14 carries. Terrence West got 15. Crowell ended up with 54 rushing yards and a touchdown, while West had 54 yards, no touchdown. So that's been the story of the whole year. Crowell has 8 touchdowns on the season. West has 3. So that's why you want Crowell. However, to be fair, the last time they played Cincinnati, that Thursday night game, all 3 of the backs at the time, including Ben Tate, all scored a touchdown. So, and at that time, West had the best game with 94 yards. So West is in the gut calls based on the fact that he hasn't had a touchdown recently, and they seem to be favoring him. But West did start last week and did have a better week against Cincinnati for the Thursday night game. So something to think about. Josh Gordon, I have him in the play him if you got him. He was great his first week back. He caught 8 of his 16 targets for 120 yards at Atlanta. At Buffalo, he caught 7 of his 13 targets for 75 yards, and that's a tough defense, so it was still respectable. And then last week, he caught 2 of his 7 targets for 15 yards versus Indianapolis, which was a huge bust. In fact, people were talking about all these other teams, and they didn't really talk about how Josh Gordon screwed a lot of people last week.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so listen, Brian Hoyer was a total failure last week. I have no idea what the chemistry will be like with Johnny Manziel. I can't imagine it being refined, considering they don't even know each other. But, listen, it's worth a chance because it's Josh Gordon. I will say, though, the Bengals give up the second fewest points to wide receivers, and last time that they played, they didn't even have Andrew Hawkins. He was out hurt. They just ran the ball the whole time because they give up the 4th most points to running backs. So all you do is run on them. You don't have to throw. So it's a little risky, but I'm putting him up there. Gut calls, Jordan Cameron, I mean, once again, he caught 4 of his 5 targets for 41 yards. Tight ends are terrible. I mean, whatever. It was his first week back since week 8, so why not? Same with Cleveland defense. They dominated Dalton and the Bengals in that Thursday night game. They were dominant against Indianapolis until T.Y. Hilton came alive in the second half of the game. They still had 22 fantasy points, though, so I still think they're a big start. Bench warmers, I have Johnny Manziel, and I cannot in good conscience tell you to start a rookie quarterback his first game of the season against a team that gives up the 7th fewest points to quarterbacks during the fantasy football playoffs. I may be wrong on this. I may, but I can't tell you to do that. And I'm okay with myself telling you that I'm not telling you that. There we go. And then also on that, Andrew Hawkins is probable with a knee. He sat out against Cincinnati, as I said. Manziel's going to need someone to throw to, and he might be the best option. He might be the most solid kind of Reggie Wayne type. I don't know. But it's just too risky this week for me. And then Billy Cundiff, same kind of thing with Arizona, but not in a good way. Cundiff's missed 4 field goals from 44 yards or closer in the last 5 games. So find another kicker, because they're close ones.
Found another one, guys.
Thanks.
All right, we got the Washington Redskins 3-10 and the New York Giants 4-9. Game of the week.
It's gonna be so good. So good.
Oh, who's even going to be playing in this game? There's so many injuries.
Well, yeah. But it's a division game, right? So division games always seem to have a little bit more of an oomph to it.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, play if you got him. I've got Alfred Morris. Morris got shut down last week, like, hard. I'm talking negative yards kind of game had he not been for one big play to put him in the positive. I mean, it was brutal. Luckily, the Giants' line is not as stout, and they give the 10th most points to running backs. So rest assured he's going to do better this week. I'm thinking RB2, kind of flex roll, okay? Got calls. Got Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon. Jackson is still listed as questionable with a shin injury and has a 50-50 shot at playing this week against the Giants. If he doesn't play, then Pierre Garçon is someone to consider if you are desperate for a wide receiver.
Oh.
He had 9 points last week in a standard league.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But it's because of injuries, right? At this point, they're like, well, got no one else to throw to. And he may be out there because, again, as we said last week, he should not have been on your team because he was completely useless all season long. But if Deshaun is out, then Pierre is the one to step up, right? So my big issue here is with the uncertainty at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
This is still not my favorite situation to put yourself in for the playoffs, right? So as far as that, we'll get to my bench, which is Colt McCoy. McCoy had a neck injury in the game last week against the Rams, but received good news that there was no structural damage.
Good.
I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what that means, but I'm going to guess that's a good thing.
Sounds like a house.
I'm going to say structural. Right?
Yeah.
Structural damage.
There was
to
a
your
fire,
neck.
but it's
Not
okay.
positive.
There's no structural damage, people.
I mean, it ruined all your stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
The smell's
totally
going to
screwed.
last forever.
Right.
Your memories are gone. But that concrete slab is still standing. Yeah.
Jeez. Okay.
Anyway, so McCoy he was able to practice on Wednesday. Granted, it was limited, but more so the issue is that Coach Gruden will not announce who his starter will be for this week against the Giants. So I do not like indecisiveness. So
Come on, McCoy.
don't love it. That's it for the Redskins.
No neck McCoy is better than RG3. Let's get to those Giants, shall we? Play him if you got him. Play him if you got him. Odell Beckham Jr., ODB. Had 15 targets last week. That is 4 more than his previous target high. He caught 11 of those targets. He's a machine for 130 yards and a touchdown. This guy is crazy town. There's nothing but upside about ODB. He is a must-start, you guys. New York Giants defense. Hey-ho, we're going against Washington. Doesn't matter who's quarterback, you guys. It's game on. They give up the second most fantasy points to defenses. I'm into it. The Giants continue this great matchup that they've been having. So, last week they had 8 sacks, 2 interceptions, a fumble, and a touchdown. I think they can do it again. I'm into it. Gut calls. Rashad Jennings and Andre Williams. Well,
ouch.
Yeah, ouch is right. We all waited for Rashad's announcement last week. Is he going? Is he not going? He's active, but was he really? Not really. No. He was active, screwing over all of our fantasy teams.
I really wish they had an active with an asterisk next to it, which really just stands for decoy.
Right. Yeah.
That's
they're kind of giving away to the other team, but they're going to figure it out.
They could just do it just for fantasy,
It's
just
so
10 minutes before your game goes.
Just shoot me an email.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that so much to ask, Coughlin?
Right?
I know you're busy, but just drop me a line.
Andre Williams, his backup, on the other hand, had his best game of the season. 24 carries, 131 yards, and a touchdown. Reports out of practice say that Jennings is looking better, and that Coach Coughlin seems to be more confident with his ability to carry more plays and to be the workhorse again. So, we'll see. The Redskins give up the second fewest fantasy points to running back, so either way, not my favorite. Yeah. Either one of them, you guys. Really look for a different option this week. I mean it. It could get bad. Larry Donnell falls into gut calls. The man of the hour, the guy of 2014 that I have hated covering. Donnell is the most frustrating player ever. I mean, one of. It's not true. He's one of. There's several, but he is one of them. He had his fourth game under 4 fantasy points in the last 5 weeks. With only 7 targets, he will need to get a touchdown to be worth a start. But it's the Redskins, and they give up the second most fantasy points to tight ends. So the opposite of running backs, they're actually very, very, very weak against tight ends. He's not my favorite play because he's not my favorite guy, but he might be your best option off the waiver wire, guys, if he's available. Just saying.
I mean, the good news is your tight end isn't going to make it or break your fantasy team. We've basically been all rolling with like 4 points and under all season, unless you got Gronk.
He might make your fantasy team, but he's not going to break your fantasy team.
He's not going to lose it for
you. That's right. That's right. Because you cannot expect any more than 2.5 points from your tight end at this point.
Right.
I ranked him as low as I possibly could.
Yeah. That's good. Eli Manning. I'm usually not one to say start Eli, but this week there are worse options, all right? I'm not mad if you need to start him in a deep league. Or if you own Cam Newton, Ashley, maybe Eli's available. Oh, yeah, you can't pick up anybody else. I'm not one to stream Eli Manning, but this week I say stream him. Pick him up. You guys play him. He's made this connection with ODB. As I said, I think Larry Donnell is going to find the end zone this week, you guys. Eli could have a 300-yard, 3-touchdown game against the Redskins. Just saying.
It could happen.
They give up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. It's very possible. I'm not upset about it. Also, I haven't got calls Preston Parker. If you're in deep, deep, deep leagues and you're looking for somebody to get you something, playing against the Redskins, there's worse options than Parker. Ruben Randall's on my bench. He only had 1 reception off of 3 targets. It's now his 3rd game with 4 or less targets. Preston has seemed to become the second receiver. So, adios, Randall.
And he's good in daily leagues.
Parker?
Yeah, because he's cheap.
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Cheap.
Yeah, really cheap. I would think Eli Manning would be cheap too, but... Miami Dolphins 7-6 at New England Patriots 10-3.
These are always really interesting games because, like, historically, I always think of the Dolphins as being really bad.
Yeah, it's hard to get it out of your head.
It's hard, like at least from our generation, they just haven't been good at all. And the Pats are, but for whatever reason, the Patriots kind of struggle a bit against the Dolphins, which is really interesting to me. But even with that said, I have absolutely nobody in my plate if you got them. This matchup. But I do have some good calls here. So Caleb Sturgis, kicker. Again, we're talking about kickers. You know what? Kickers can win your league for you. So there you go. But Sturgis is the 11th highest scoring kicker in the league thus far this year. So depending on the size of your league, he is a must start. He did have his best week of the season against the Patriots. So that is something to keep in mind if you're looking to stream kickers. Lamar Miller, I also have my gut call section. You'll probably need to play Miller, let's be honest. He had 12 touches for 53 yards last week and no touchdowns, so not great. But if he can find his way in the end zone, then you've got like an RB1 kind of player on your hands. Again, the problem is the offense is struggling, so they're not getting near the red zone. Instead, we've got RB2 with the very average matchup. So look at your bench and see if you have a player with a slightly better matchup than Lamar Miller, because I'm just not loving it. He's going to give you okay numbers if you need him to flex, but let's see if we can try to not have him be one of your running backs you depend on. The Dolphins wide receivers, I'm sorry, they're my bench, but when you've got Brian Hartline, who only averages 2.6 catches a game.
No one has Hartline.
I'm saying he's your leading receiver last week.
Oh, well.
That is a problem.
That was weird.
That is a big problem. So, Wallace was only able to snag 3 of his 4 targets for 39 yards. He was stopped by a less than impressive Ravens secondary. And sadly, the Patriots secondary is impressive, and they give up the 5th fewest points. So I do not like any of the Dolphins wide receivers. I'm also not liking Ryan Tannehill, and I don't like the Dolphins defense. As much like with the Broncos, you do not start defenses against the Broncos. You do not start defenses against the Patriots. Not now that Brady and Gronk and all of them have finally got some good juju going. You don't do it.
Right.
That's right. All right, you guys. Play him if you got him for the Patriots. Rob Gronkowski. Duh. the only good tight end in the NFL. Congratulations. The title is yours.
Did you see a picture of him kissing a kitten on ESPN.com?
I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other side of Gronk. It's a little much for me.
I love it.
I think it's
so
creepy,
funny. I think
and
he's funny.
everybody's like,
I think he's funny.
this is so great.
I think he's supposed to be
You know
funny.
the kitten.
No, I know,
Kitten's
but
not
it's like
his
it's
idea.
just-
Like, wait.
yeah, it must be. I'm not quite sure.
All I can
I
think
just
of
kind of was like, whoa.
I like it. I think it's
Okay.
hilarious.
All I can think of is something like Gronk love kitten, Gronk love cats. That's all I can think of.
This year he's so ballin', he can do whatever he wants. He wants
Whatever
to have cats,
he
do
wants.
whatever he wants. Cats.
Yeah.
It's cats for Gronk. Go for
I'm
it.
into it. I like it. Tom Brady is
Kitty is
also in
soft.
the must-start category. Food for thought. He isn't my favorite play this week, although I am saying to play him. Brady's had, Brady has had only 2 interceptions in his first 8 games, but he's had 5 interceptions in the last 5 games. So it's not the direction you want to go. I will say I think he will still get 300 yards plus 2 touchdowns, but I think he's going to have more than 1 turnover against the Miami Dolphins defense.
Wow.
I do.
Interesting.
I do. Gut calls LeGarrette Blount. Blount has been sentenced to 50 hours of community service for his marijuana arrest. So no
Nice.
worries, you guys. If Blount gets fined for smoking a blunt, then it won't be until 2015. So we're all in the clear for the rest of the season, if you're going to play him, that is.
There
He
you go.
should have an okay game. You know, he is the main guy back there. It is a Belichick running game, so only you can feel as confident as you want. But he had 20 attempts, which is a positive thing. So,
Yeah.
just saying. And let's see here. Julian Edelman, Brandon LaFell, they're both going under gut calls this week. Both of these wide receivers, I would say, are nothing more than wide receiver 3, flex receiver. In the last 2 games, Edelman had 3 more targets than LaFell in each game. Edelman had an amazing game last week with 141 yards and a touchdown. LaFell had only 4 receptions for 41 yards and a fumble. But the week before that, LaFell found the end zone twice. So I think that only one of them are going to find the end zone against Miami. My money's on Edelman, but either way, I think neither one of them are more than a flex. Bench warmers, Shane Vereen, his time seems to be expired a bit. He only had 1 attempt rushing for 1 yard. He did catch 3 balls for 30 yards, but the job seems to have gone to Blount.
Yep.
Let's move on to Jacksonville Jaguars 2-11 at the Baltimore Ravens 8-5.
In sad, sad news, breakout kid Denard Robinson was declared out for the season with a mid-foot sprain. It's another blow to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I actually feel
Seriously.
for them. I mean, their whole team has just been gimpy. It's just sad. So, bummer. But play him if you got him. No one. Gut calls, Marquise Lee and Alan Hearns. So for some reason, Alan Hearns has an out symbol next to him, but I can't find him being out at all anywhere. Ignore. He was the only guy who scored a touchdown last week. The week before was Marquise Lee. They're the only 2 people that are scoring. I think they're both gut calls, and you might be able to get both of them cheap. And frankly, this is going to be the best matchup that they have all year because the Ravens give up the absolute most points to wide receivers. They're tied for first. That's insane. So I think that both of them are actually pretty good plays, but they're in gut calls because they're Jaguars. Bench warmers, Blake Bortles. Good matchup, bad matchup, it doesn't matter. Bortles has thrown at least 1 interception in every game but 1, and also losing Denard Robinson's a blow, so just don't go there. Cecil Shorts, we have him ranked number 54, and I think we might be generous. Since the Week 11 bye, he's gone 6, 35, and 3 yards. Not points, yards. And 0 touchdowns. So it's rumored that the
For
Jaguars...
a second, I was like, where is she going? Oh, that's where she was going with it.
Oh.
Yards.
So supposedly the Jaguars are pretty happy with their young wide receivers and are going to kind of part ways with him. He's in a contract year, which is unfortunate because he had a lot of injuries, but that's the way it is. Toby Gerhart and Jordan Todman are going to be filling in for Denard Robinson, but they're going to be splitting carries, and the Ravens are the opposite against running backs. They give up the absolute least points to running backs. So you wouldn't want to play anyone from this team anyway. So no go. Mercedes Lewis, last week was his best since being back from injury. He caught 3 of his 4 targets for 69 yards, and that might be good enough for you. So I'm saying his name. And also, don't start Scobie or the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. You're welcome.
There you go. You know whose defense you're starting is the Ravens. Ravens against the Jags because Jernard is no longer. That is not a threat anymore. You're just looking at receivers now, and you can beat them, Ravens. You can.
I don't know. The Ravens are pretty bad.
They are pretty bad, but they can do it. They can do it. Joe Flacco, I'm saying start him. He's had 2 games back-to-back with over 20 fantasy points. I'm not mad at that. He's going to have a great, great game against Jacksonville. I'm predicting 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Do it.
Ooh, prediction.
Predictions. I like my magic ball. I've been playing with it a lot lately. Well, Justin Forsett.
It's like that sounded bad.
I know. I even got.
I like my magic ball. I've been playing with it a lot recently.
I know. I know. Just wait. Justin Forsett. Well, his carries got cut in half last week while he's recovering with a knee injury. All systems are a go, you guys. He's fine. He's healthy enough to be the workhorse that we know him to be. I love him. He's doing it. 13 points this week. Steve Smith Sr., I'm putting him in must starts. Had 2 touchdowns in the last 3 games. I think he's going to see a lot of targets this week, and let me tell you why. On my bench, I have Torrey Smith. Last week, Torrey played through his injury, and we saw just what that got you. A big 0. Brandon, sorry. Really depressing.
Still reeling.
This week, he is yet to practice and will most likely be limited once again, so don't do it, you guys. This is playoffs. We can't afford it. Kamar Atkins saw the ball more because of Torrey, but again, I would not bet on him having another great game. He may, but I'm not in love with it, you guys. Not going for it.
Yeah.
No, so go Steve Smith Sr., Triple S. It's all you this week, guy. I feel it. Let's move on. Oakland Raiders 2-11 at the Kansas City Chiefs 7-6. Oakland Raiders. This game we got here, you guys. This is an interesting team here.
So glad they won last
Raiders. Week. Exactly. Congratulations for beating San Francisco 49ers. You deserved
Very cool.
It. You just proved how bad Kaepernick and friends are.
Kaepernick and friends.
The Raiders.
It's like a cop show or something.
It would be the worst show ever.
yeah.
Kaepernick and friends. It'd be really bad.
I like
you probably just pitched a pilot right now.
Overalls in the back, I don't know why. It just.
The only cool part of the show would be Vernon Davis at his Jamba Juices that he owns.
Yeah.
That would actually be a great part of the show.
Oh man, I'm sure they're all really nice people. The Raiders, play him if you got him. Latavius Murray, I'm putting him here, guys. You guys, it is still, it's a little too soon, but I'm into it. Okay, get this guy in your lineup this week. The Chiefs gave up big points to Kerwin Williams last week, and the week before that, guess who they played? Latavius Murray and the Oakland Raiders, where he too had a crazy amount, I believe 23 fantasy points, and that's with an injury. He didn't even play the whole game. Murray had 23 carries last week, though, for only 76 yards, but he is still clearly the best thing that Oakland's got going for them right now. They're going to really need to rely on him if they want to beat the Chiefs 2 times this year. So I'm into him, guys. Play him if you got him. Good calls. Marcel Reese. You guys, there's 2 running backs now that aren't embarrassing.
I've always liked Marcel Reese. I've never understood.
Yeah, Reese Jones, Drew McFadden. You guys are great guys, but time has come. Reese was the most productive back in Oakland last week. I can't believe it. I haven't even talked about him at all this year, but he had 7 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown. In PPR leagues, guys, he had 19 fantasy points. Amazing. No one owns this guy. I mean, like, literally, you guys, nobody owns him. Pick him up and play him against the beatable Kansas City Chiefs rush defense. You can do it.
Bold. I like it.
Bold. Gut calls Michael Rivera. They're going to need him if they want to win, you guys. He had 7 targets for 109 yards and a touchdown last week. as I said, he is going to have to be a big part of this offense if they want to beat Kansas City Chiefs twice in 3 weeks. So tight ends are risky. We all know that. Bench warmers, James Jones, Andre Holmes, Derek Carr. Don't have anybody that throws the ball or catches it because that is a waste of your time. Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs. Well, this will be quick because as Courtney says, they're very beatable. So, Jamaal Charles, you're playing him, obviously. You know this. He's the 4th highest scoring running back last week with 91 yards off 10 rushes and a touchdown. He's the 6th highest scoring running back of the season. Charles is questionable, I will say, and is suffering from a swollen knee, but he should play on Sunday. The Raiders are horrible at stopping the run, so he should, it's a little playground for Charles. What's going to be happening here? Gut calls, Travis Kelce. I pretty much can't put any tight end into a play him if you got him category. But Kelce is as close this week as it comes, right? The Raiders are subpar holding tight ends at bay, and Kelce had a nice week last week. He had 110 yards off 7 catches. So
every time I start him, he doesn't get points. I'm sorry.
Sure. This is as close as it gets to a play him if you got him, but I cannot, in good faith, tell you that there is any tight end that is a must start. I just can't. Yeah, and then as far as the bench, this is my favorite write-up to do because it literally takes me 2 seconds to write Jamaal Charles or bust. Yeah. That's really what I should just say for all of them. So there's virtually no fantasy option on this team other than Jamaal Charles, and Travis Kelce is a possibility depending if he decides to show up that day. So everyone else on the bench?
It's my favorite. I love it. They're so close to being noticeable, but not yet. Houston Texans 7-6, the Indianapolis Colts 9-4.
Yeah, so Texans, playing if you got him, Arian Foster. You might be a bit nervous that he didn't practice Wednesday, but he also didn't practice Wednesday of last week and came out and was the 8th highest scoring running back. So, he scored a touchdown. He had 127 yards off 24 touches. He was the 5th highest scoring back for this. You would be nuts not to play him. As long as he steps foot on the field, it is fine. Him being held out, this was purely like a vet maintenance kind of holdout. Fret not. He's going to be playing. Gut calls, the Houston receivers. DeAndre Hopkins didn't have the kind of week that we're used to. And Andre Johnson was, sad as usual, So, here's my big issue is that they ran the ball a lot last week, right? And they might do the same this week because as Arian Foster has a much nicer matchup than the receivers do. The Colts give up the 7th most points to running backs, whereas they give up the 4th fewest points to receivers. So I think this is going to be very much a Foster kind of day. Bench, right. Ryan Fitzpatrick. It was fun, Fitzy, rooting for you for a little bit there. We just can't do it this week. It's not a great matchup for you. And you didn't do great earlier when you played the Colts, so expect the same kind of mediocrity.
Colts, play him if you got him. Andrew Luck. 10th game, over 20 fantasy points. He's also tied with Eli Manning for interceptions, Brandon. Watching the Colts first half of the game is not always the most enjoyable thing. I do suggest watching Red Zone or whatever your cable provider gives you because it's not fun. Don't check your points with Mr. Luck until right around halfway through the second quarter because he will get it done. He threw for 294 yards and 2 touchdowns. You know what? It's a fine. Luck's fine, you guys. He's the best. Top 10 quarterback this week. Must start. T.Y. Hilton. Hilton had 19 targets last week. That is crazy. No wonder why he is heading to the game with 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's crazy good. Crazy. They have a bromance going on. I'm into it. I love it. Must start. Coby Fleener. At this point, no one is really relying on their tight end to be a big part of their fantasy win, as we've all kind of already said, unless you own Gronk, of course. So Fleener's numbers are fine. You're going to start him. It's good. 6 fantasy points is totally legit. And in PPR leagues, you guys, there is absolutely no doubt you're starting this guy. So let's just get over it. Coby Fleener. It's a great name. Gut calls. It is. I just every time. It's like Fleener. Wiener. It's my favorite. Daniel Herron. Okay, he falls to a low-end running back too, you guys. He only rushed for 26 yards. He did have 4 catches for 45 yards. But, so he's being used in different ways, but not being used in more use. I don't know how I'm saying this. It's just not. Yes. He's multi-purpose, but you just don't use him that much. It's like it's just there we go. It's not. It's a boom or bust situation for the man. So I would say try to look elsewhere for your running back 2, you guys, this week. Reggie Wayne and Dante Moncrief. This one is tough. Reggie's listed as questionable, but most likely will play. He was targeted 8 times last week, but he was only able to catch 1 of those for 5 yards. Moncrief has seen 4 targets in the last 3 weeks for 4 points, 26 points, and then 3 fantasy points. It's tough, you guys. The worst part of it is you add on the Texans give up the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers. So it's like, how do you not start them?
Yeah.
How do you not?
Start Moncrief for sure. I think
That's
he's
what I was about to say. For wide receivers, so I would for sure start Moncrief as your wide receiver 3 flex.
Wayne.
No questions asked. And Reggie, I mean, if he's looking really healthy come Friday, I'm okay with you starting him as your flex as well. But I like Moncrief over Reggie Wayne this week. And bench, it's Trent Richardson, because that's where you are, my friend. Sad. He does not get back. Yeah, he does not get comeback of the year. Green Bay Packers 9-3 at the Buffalo Bills 7-6.
Great. So play him if you got him. Aaron Rodgers, number 1 ranked quarterback. Period. Eddie Lacy, number 7 ranked running back, but he's questionable with a hip, and we're getting a ton of Twitter questions about this. So Lacy did practice on a limited basis on Wednesday, and it seems like his Week 14 late game removal was more precautionary, and they thought that they had the game in the bag, and then of course Atlanta came back. But I think he's going to play this week. Yes, I do think if you are an Eddie Lacy owner, you should get insurance with James Starks, but I don't think Starks is someone that you can play if Lacy is playing. I don't think he'll get enough snaps to make that a relevant play.
Non-playoffs.
And also, Buffalo's really good against the run. They give up the 6th fewest points to running backs. So really, Eddie Lacy's the only option there. They also give up the 10th fewest points to wide receivers, but Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb, you're going to do it. And don't worry about Cobb's lackluster performance last week. He caught 4 out of his 5 targets for 58 yards. Nelson was simply just dominating the downfield coverage, and he was just getting covered in the slot. They didn't want to force it to him, but this week they're going to have to mix it up. So he'll be back.
Well, and Lacy was used in the air too, more than usual. So
yeah. He caught 5 of his 9 targets for 33 yards and a touchdown. That's Eddie Lacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty nuts what happened last week. I wouldn't freak out about it. Randall Cobb's been a touchdown and a PPR and a yard, you name it, monster all year. You're going to be fine. However, I did win my game because he did poorly, so thank you, Randall Cobb.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you. The only guy called is James Starks. I'm going to put Davante Adams on the bench. Last week, first of all, he's probable with heel. Last week, we thought, oh, well, maybe he could be good because he's good at home, and he wasn't great. He only caught 1 of his 4 targets for 6 yards, which is bad, and we never suggest starting him on the road, so don't do it. And then Andrew Corliss, tough matchup. So Buffalo gives up the absolute fewest to tight ends, and he's always a 3-point guy anyway. And I wouldn't play Green Bay's defense, to be frank, as we could tell from Atlanta. Bills, play him if you got him. I'm going to say Fred Jackson. Once again, Fred Jackson's like the play him if you got him flex guy, so I'm going to be a little bit lower on that. But, listen, he's getting a ton of touches. He had 8 carries last week against the Broncos for 35 yards, and he caught 10 passes. He caught 10 passes for 37 yards. It was only 37 yards, so it's only PPR where you would have been, like, banking, but it's, it's going to be better against Green Bay for sure because Denver's defense is actually pretty legit. Speaking of, Sammy Watkins did well against the Denver defense too. He caught 7 of 12 targets for 127 yards. He did lose a fumble. He's a rookie. It was his first catch of the game. So he bounced back and he had a decent game. So
I was at the game and I played Sammy in a different league and I kept trying to congratulate myself, and nobody was high-fiving me. No one. I'm like, come on, I know someone around here plays fantasy.
Someone here plays.
Somebody plays.
Worst
and like one
fan
random
ever.
guy looked at me and kind of like winked at me and was like, so he always turned around and gave me a look whenever Sammy got a catch. And I was like, yeah, you're rooting for me.
Yeah, you're like, we got this game. It'll be fine. Gut calls, though, Kyle Orton. I was going to say if you're in a Cam Newton situation and you can pick someone up, he's thrown 2 interceptions in each of his last 2 games, but last week he threw for 355 yards and a touchdown and even ran in a touchdown. I don't love him, but you might be in a situation and Green Bay gives up the 13th most points to quarterbacks. Robert Woods and Chris Hogan. I know no one respects Chris Hogan, but I'm telling you, they're cheap for daily. They're going to get a ton of catches. Do it. Those are my thoughts.
By nobody, you mean me, because I never ranked him, and I ranked him this week, Brandon.
You did. I was going to say thank you. You ranked him 71.
You're welcome.
But
bone.
I like that. And then tight ends are terrible. But last week Scott Chandler went 8 for 11 for 81 yards. So if you're in a PPR league,
He was used a lot last week. A lot.
Everyone else is on the bench.
Benching. Like it. Let's move to those afternoon games. Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2-11 at the Carolina Panthers 8-1.
Yeah, so I've got Mike Evans in the plane if you got him. And even I'm torn on this. Even I am torn as to whether he's a gut call or if you got him. But last week was an interesting game in which Vincent Jackson was targeted more and had more catches and yards, whereas Evans only had 4 catches for 45 yards, but 2 of those catches were for touchdowns.
Yeah.
So he is the target in the end zone, which makes him more valuable. So this is why I am putting him in the play if you got him, because while he's not necessarily in the yards at the moment, he is who they're looking at in the end zone. So, I mean, it's easy points there.
Vincent was great on my bench.
So I have him as a gut call because he finally had a decent week against a team that, quite honestly, he should have been shut down by. He had 10 catches for 159 yards last week against the Lions, who is a really good defense. He should have a decent week based on numbers with the Panthers because they give up the 11th most fantasy points, but that will probably mean that he will zero out on you. Consistency hasn't been the name of the game from him this year. So numbers-wise, he should do well, but I'm telling you, buyer beware.
I think I like Vincent this week. I think they're going to focus on Evans, and I think Vincent's going to get open. Touchdown, 40 yards.
I think the name of the show is just This Was My Pain.
I like Vincent in a wide receiver 3 league or as a flex. I do not like him for you to depend upon as a wide receiver. Personally, as a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. So I agree. I think they are teaming up on Evans more so, and that is what's opening up Jackson a bit. And I think Jackson and McCown are finally finding a little bit of chemistry, but. Playoffs. I don't know if I could count on Vincent Jackson. Just saying. Bench. I've got all the Tampa Bay running back crew. Seriously, you know better. And then bench Josh McCown. McCown is allegedly going to remain the starter quarterback, even though they were eliminated from playoff contention last week. This is not fantasy relevant to you, as you are not playing McCown. But it is relevant to you, as very well might be playing 1 or 2 of his receivers. So that's the reason. Not even mentioning McCown. That's it.
That's all she wrote. Well, sad news out of Carolina. We're going to start off with the bench this week, you guys. Cam Newton got in a car accident on his way to practice.
Yeah.
Ew, if you see the pictures of his truck, it's bad. He flipped over 4 times, reportedly. He suffered the same injury that Romo suffered. But I'll tell you guys, Romo got kicked in the back. Newton got in a car accident. You often don't see the effects of a car accident until days after. Yeah. Whether that's whiplash, soreness, whatever. I
can't believe he's as okay as he is.
Oh my God, he is shocking. Superman. I mean, it's crazy.
Superman.
I mean.
Get well soon, buddy. Whoa.
Get well soon. Thank God for fantasy owners. Cam Newton had a hot and cold season, so most of us don't own him anyways, but That is sad, and it is going to possibly affect the rest of the team that we do own. Calvin Benjamin, Greg Olsen, I still have both of them as must-starts. Derek Anderson will be taking the role of the quarterback. And you guys, it's perfect because the game that Derek Anderson played this year was game 1 against the Bucs. So it's kind of...
He did well.
And he did well. He got 18 fantasy points. The other guys did well, so this is a great game, actually, for him to have to come in to replace them, for us as analysts to kind of predict the future, which today seems to be my day. It's week 15, and I can say what I want. Calvin Benjamin's a must start. They give up the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers. He had 15 fantasy points the first time they played. We're playing him, you guys. I know he's been a little cold lately, but gotta play the guys who brought you here. Greg Olsen, 13 points last week, 72 yards and a touchdown. I take that. He had 14 points in week 1 against Tampa Bay. This is a no-brainer. Greg Olsen is a must-start. Jonathan Stewart, woohoo! 21 fantasy points last week. I never thought I would say that. It's awesome. D'Angelo Williams might be playing this week, but I think even if he does, Stewart's going to be the workhorse for Carolina. They're going to roll with him. He's obviously shown that he can do it when you just have to rely on him. Tampa Bay is weak against the rush. I'm into it. That's my Carolina coverage. Good luck, Cam. We love you. New York Jets 2-11 and Tennessee Titans 2-11. Second game of the week. Game of the week.
Can I ask you a quick question, Courtney, though, about Jonathan Stewart? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
So, Francisco Rice from Facebook has presented us his lineup. He's got a very tough matchup this week. And his players that he's starting are Matthew Stafford, Jamal Charles, Trey Mason, Jerry Maclin, Odell Beckham Jr., Rob Gronkowski, and DeAndre Hopkins. Now, he does have Jonathan Stewart on his bench. Do we feel better about Jonathan Stewart than we do Trey Mason this week?
Yes. Play Jonathan Stewart.
I'm going to agree with that, yeah.
I'm also going to agree with that. And he does have as his receivers on his bench Doug Baldwin, Deshaun Jackson, Steve Smith Sr., and Kenny Stills. I'm tempted to say Steve Smith Sr. should replace DeAndre Hopkins.
No.
You don't think so?
No, Steve Smith. It's totally possible that Steve Smith Sr. could have a blow-up game, and it also could be possible that some other kid that plays receiver that we've never even heard of will get 20 fantasy points, because Steve Smith Sr. is very hot and cold, and with Torrey out, that's really the only person that they have to cover. So I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. You guys know more about Hopkins. What do you guys think?
I'm just nervous to be all rush for the Texans this week.
It's true. That's very true.
I feel like they're like a flip of a coin, and whoever is on your bench will do better.
Yeah, it's true.
That's true. So, I wouldn't play Doug Baldwin in his place. Deshaun is hurt. May play, may not. Kenny Stills is intriguing against Chicago.
Yep, I like that
I'm not against Kenny Stills at all.
You what?
I'm not against Kenny Stills at all.
Well, those are some of our thoughts for you, Francisco. Hopefully that helps you somewhat. For sure, let's switch Stewart in, though, for Mason, and let's move on to the Jets.
I noticed there were no Jets on Francisco's roster.
Yeah, he did some good drafting.
That's weird. Okay, so the Jets, keep it simple. Crisscross, we have them ranked really high. You want to know why? Because
you like
Tennessee
that? Like that?
I don't, but I'm going to stand behind it. They're both probable. Just keep your eye on the injury report. But Tennessee gives up the second most points to running backs, and it seems like you can start them, but they split the carries. Literally, they have 15 to 17 touches each per game. You don't know which one's going to break out. I can't tell you, and I'm not even going to try. Neither involved in the passing game whatsoever. So if you're in PPR league, I don't know. It's tough, but, so's fantasy football. So there you go. Got calls. Percy Harvin is doubtful with an ankle. Of course, he has his best game of the year, where he's like 6 of 9 for 124 yards and a touchdown. Supposedly it's a low ankle sprain, though, and the x-rays are negative, whatever that means. But still, I don't know if I'd depend on that. Eric Decker, probable with a toe, because he's also always hurt. Had a nice game at Minnesota as well, his alma mater. Gophers. He went 6 of 8 for 89 yards. Tennessee gives up the 14th most points to wide receivers. But, it's all up to Geno Smith, which, speaking of our bench, we have Geno Smith and everyone else.
Very good. Very
Nice.
good. Good coverage. Good coverage.
I thought I put in some effort there.
The Titans are a very similar situation, Brandon.
Nice.
Play me if you got them. None.
Great.
Gut calls. None. They're all on the bench. All of them. Tennessee Titan wide receivers. You have a complete mess on your hands. This whole core is injured. Wright is injured hand. Hunter's on IR. They're all inconsistent. Hagan had the most points, but do you really want to risk your entire league on Derek Hagan? Didn't think so. Tennessee Titans quarterbacks. Mettenberger suffered another shoulder injury. And you don't want to ride your stellar fantasy season on Locker. Now, do you? Nope.
Do you think Locker could come out, though, and have a Fitzy return game? Like, you benched me, and now I'm getting 20 points? I ranked him a little higher because I thought that was a possibility.
It could be a little bit, but not Fitzy's.
A little bit.
Fitzy's was
it's not 6 touchdowns. He won't be Fitzy.
It won't be
I think
that.
he could have a decent game.
The Jets
My
are pretty
issue-
bad at their secondary.
My issue is that are you willing to risk fantasy on Jake Locker, a guy that hasn't played? No.
But if you do
Now, if you're-
daily,
If daily, maybe if you get him low, again, look what your other options are. And if you're in a Cam Newton situation, it isn't the worst matchup. But again, his receivers are out. He's got Nate Washington and Hagan. These are his options. You've got Delaney Walker, who hasn't done much in weeks, and then you've got a really bad running back situation as well. There's just not a whole lot of talent on this team.
Oh, it's so bad. It's like, there's no offense for either one of these teams. The defenses are so bad that it couldn't be a good game for the offensive players. I don't know. This is tough.
That's the thing. They're both so bad. No one knows what's going to happen with this game.
It could be. It's a weird game. It's a weird matchup.
It could be a fantasy orgy, or it could be like 3-6 is the final score for this game.
Well, let's get done talking about the bad teams. Let's move on to some good teams. Denver Broncos 10-3, the San Diego Chargers 8-5. This will be the game of the week. Maybe not.
I hope so.
Probably not in fantasy, but here we go.
So I don't want you to forget about C.J. Anderson. But C.J. Anderson was held out of practice on Wednesday. He left the game last week, but he came back, and has said that his ankle injury shouldn't be so serious as to prevent him from playing this week. So don't freak out. The Chargers give up the 12th fewest points to opposing running backs, but Anderson has been plowing through every line he's come in contact with. So don't freak out. But I will say it wouldn't hurt to pick up Juwan Thompson as a handcuff just in case. Think about it. Demaryius Thomas. Don't freak out. But no, Juwan Thompson had a decent game last week. Sure. And I think CJ is going to play. But I'm just saying at this point in time with the playoffs, play it smart. Play it smart. Just pick up a little insurance plan. Demaryius Thomas, his ankle did not practice on Wednesday, but it's been said that it's kind of more of a rest situation, that he should, be fine to go. I'm thinking look for a bounce-back week. Emmanuel Sanders, you can't bench top 10 receivers. You just can't do it. I know the pass tech has been struggling a little bit as of recently, but I think this week, the deep ball is going to make a return. I really do. The Chargers secondary is middle of the pack, so the offensive kind of dominance we were seeing at the beginning of the season, I think that's right around the corner. Peyton Manning. Well, I called it. I got mocked, and I'm like, I'm the only person saying to possibly bench him, and then he got 2 points.
Amazing.
Ouch.
That was
I
bad.
don't like that I was right, but when I said you should send him a quarterback, but I do think that he's going to come back this week. I'm going to tell you why. I think the loss of Julius Thomas has been bigger than most people want to admit, but the Manning slump has been pretty much during the exact same time period that Julius Thomas has been gone.
Of course.
So Thomas is expected to be back, and so will Peyton.
Oh,
Don't
I thought he
freak
was
out.
back last week. Oh, he ruined my life? Never mind.
Yeah.
It's a classic, he's active, yet we're not going to play him situation. I don't understand that. It's brutal. But anyway, Peyton's going to be back. Don't freak out. Thomas is back. The Juju is going to be good. We're fine. Connor Barth, depending on if you're a Robbie Gould owner or if your kicker is struggling, you should consider Barth. He's only a couple weeks in, so you're probably going to forget about him, but he's actually a viable option this week.
This could be a field goal game.
He's a gut call, by the way. It could be a field goal game. And I've got Julius Thomas also in my gut call section. If you're frustrated with Julius, Just get in line. His game time decision has really messed up your lineups leading up to the playoffs, and we are so sorry about that. Cannot be helped. But the good news is that he did practice on Wednesday, so that is a very good sign. He's expected to play, and he's expected to be a big part of the offense. So bench, Broncos defense, Chargers give up the 15th fewest points. This is going to be a shoot-'em-out kind of game. It's going to be good. Don't play them.
Yeah, did you hear when Chris Collinsworth was like, Virgil Green and Jacob Tamme, they're doing a really good job at blocking. I mean, maybe Julius Thomas won't get as much playing time when he comes back.
That's crazy talk.
I was just like, Chris Collinsworth, don't be concerned, okay?
Oh my God.
I mean, I love Chris Collinsworth. I love Chris Collinsworth.
It's the craziest thing he's ever said. That maybe not the craziest I've heard.
Julius's presence alone on the field is something that's been missed. The fact that you don't, no one's scared of Tamme. No one's scared of Virgil Green.
Virgil Green's a great blocker. He's doing a great job for our team. I have nothing bad to say about him. I'm just saying we take Julius back with open arms. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Yes. Speaking of open arms and tons of children, which by the way, I do SiriusXM, and they were like, "Did you know he has like 8 kids?" I was like, "Yeah, he must have like a van." I was like, not everyone knows about this, you guys. Philip
How
Rivers.
do people not know about this? It's like one of the few redeeming qualities of him. It's like, oh yeah, he's got like
a gaggle,
little football team.
A gaggle.
Yeah. And he like sits there and throws the ball with his girls, and he's like, yeah, what? They're all gonna learn to play.
Of course they are.
Okay. Yep.
And they're probably all going to play well against the Broncos, which is why we ranked him number 9, even though he's kind of been a little up and down. He does play well against the Broncos, and
it's December.
It's December, and the talent's there, so we're going to give him high marks. They give up the 6th most points to quarterbacks. It is what it is. Ryan Matthews also, he's questionable with a right ankle / leg. His health is always a problem, you guys. It's just always a problem.
Always.
Last week, Donald Brown was actually the highest scoring running back, but Matthews' injury came before the end of the first half. He kind of sat out the second half. He ran it 2 more times, but not really. If he's healthy, great, and if not, but the Broncos give up the 5th fewest points to running backs, so I'm not going to tell you to start Brandon Oliver or Donald Brown either. Just stay away. Keenan Allen, okay. Is there a Wilson on Revis Island?
Seriously.
Like, does someone, like, draw a face on a ball and just, like, talk to something because they're so lonely? Wow!
I hope so.
He caught 2 of his 3 targets for 3 yards. That's just crazy. I mean, he goes up against Chris Harris this week from the Broncos, but, man.
There's no slouch. Chris Harris is no
slouch, so I don't know. Antonio Gates, we have him ranked number 3 because in PPR formats, let's be honest, it's tight ends. You have to start Antonio Gates. And Ladarius Green is out with a concussion, so he's not going to be taking the 2 or 3 targets that he normally takes, and hopefully he gets well soon. But yeah, so the Broncos are the weakest against tight ends, so look for some work there. Also, Nick Novak, just a reminder, he's there. Kickers matter. Got calls, Malcolm Floyd. Broncos give up the 11th fewest points to wide receivers, but if they choose to shut down Keenan Allen, Floyd is going to get work. And last week he was the number 1 scorer on the team, period.
Yeah.
And he got 3 of his 6 targets for 54 yards and a touchdown. And I think that'll be about his line this week. And that's a pretty decent flex.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Why not? Everyone else on the bench, including their defense.
Bench them. Minnesota Vikings 6-7 against the Detroit Lions 9-4. Vikings.
I picked up Charles Johnson in all of my leagues.
No, you didn't, because I have him in our family league.
That's true.
It's like
I don't count that one.
And what did I say last week? He was going to have his biggest game of the year, and sure enough, he did. He would have had even a bigger game if he didn't fumble on the 1-yard line. But
that was the thing.
Yeah. 16 fantasy points is nothing to be upset about. Unfortunately, Detroit is something to be upset about.
Yep.
Their defense is legit. 7th fewest fantasy points, but they have been giving up more points lately to wide receivers. So I am still okay with Charles Johnson. I have him on our gut calls instead of play him if you got him, but I'm still okay if you need to play him. I'm also okay if you need to play with Minnesota's defense. Another double-digit performance last week. And no, this is not going to be easy, but the Vikings defense is looking good. And sometimes you just need to play the hot hand. If
they are looking good, aren't they?
They are. They're just looking good. They seem to be in the right place at the right time, and that's all you need. And that's it, you guys. The Minnesota Vikings is tough. Benchwarmers, Matt Asiata and Ben Tate. Asiata ran 19 times, but was only able to get 54 yards. Tate barely used again. But Zimmer says he wants to get Tate more carries. So I don't know what that means. I know that Detroit gives up the fourth fewest points to running backs. So that ain't good. Kyle Rudolph. Yeah, I played you last week. Bleep! What I want to say about you. Got him on the bench. Teddy Bridgewater, sorry, you're on the bench after a very nice performance with 19 fantasy points. But it's Detroit. It's the Lions.
Indeed. With that said, like Courtney says, you're playing the Lions defense.
Yep.
Certainly. And their fourth highest scoring defense overall, their fourth highest scoring defense last week against the Bucks. And the Vikings, give up the 10th most points to defenses. So that's a must play right there. You're obviously playing Calvin Johnson, obviously. Joique Bell, you have really lucked out this year, I want to say, with Joique Bell. Because you were looking at the usual running back by committee situation, but Reggie Bush has been sidelined like the whole season essentially, and Bell has done fantastic. He's the third highest scoring running back last week with 18 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown, and the Vikings give up the 9th most points to opposing backfields. So he should have a great day. Feel good about him. Gut calls. I got Matthew Stafford in my gut call section. He's now had 2 good weeks in a row, and has seemed to finally find his groove with Johnson back. Minnesota actually does a good job at stifling quarterbacks. So depending on what your other quarterback situation is, 2-quarterback kind of league, he might be worth a thought. But again, like Courtney said, Minnesota D, they're like picking up steam right now. So
they're good.
Definitely got call situation. Golden Tate. I am sorry, guys. Golden Tate got you to the playoffs, but since Megatron has been back, he has just been,
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, it's Megatron Mania right now. I mean, they're not even looking at Tate unless they absolutely have to, because they can't remotely possibly feed Johnson in the tiniest sliver about opening the ball. And then maybe they would think about throwing a Golden Tate at this point.
Do you think that Golden Tate and Mohamed Sanu have a Wilson?
That's what I was going to say, Brandon, is those two are the most underused players in the NFL. If they could be used like the Broncos use their receivers, then Cincinnati and Detroit would be crazy, crazy good.
Crazy, yeah. Why they haven't figured out a better 1-2 punch with those two? Because Sanu is crazy talented. Golden Tate has proven that he can be talented on the team this year. Like, it's just, I think what the issue is because both of the 2-star receivers on that team were incorporated from the beginning. So I think it's really honestly a chemistry juju thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they haven't been able to figure out how to really kind of incorporate the offense with both of them. They both are running offenses with essentially one stud receiver, and then the other guy comes back. Now they're like, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Figure it out. Figure it out for next year. Bench Joseph Faria. You haven't started a Lions tight end all season. But in case you were curious, he's placed on IR with an ankle injury. So you're still not playing him, and now you really can't.
Who's on IR?
Joseph Faria.
Oh, he is. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sad. No more fun dances in the end zone. All right, we got the San Francisco 49ers 7-6, the Seattle Seahawks 9-4.
So finally, everyone caught up to the fact that San Francisco is an offensive wasteland. I mean,
horrible.
Big changes are coming, but until then, ugh. And you know what? I've been saying that they've been like this all year, and I only got text messages yesterday from friends being like, hey, can you believe it? Oakland's going to beat San Francisco. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I can believe
cover
it.
them, and it's the saddest thing I've done in a long time.
It's totally painful.
And yet, it makes me happy.
Wow.
I feel bad for Anquan Boldin, because I do love Anquan Boldin.
Yeah, well, I feel bad for the team. I feel like it's really lost. It's a wasteland. As I said, just offensive wasteland. It's a rematch from Thanksgiving. We saw what happened. I don't think too much is going to change. In fact, it might be worse because they're in Seattle. So sorry to everyone. Therefore, San Francisco, play them if you got them. None. Gut calls. I don't want to take like too much of an issue here, but we have Frank Gore at 33 and Carlos Hyde at 45. Technically, that makes them not starters. I still feel like this is too high. In fact, Bruce Miller was the running back with a touchdown last week. Bruce Miller, you say? Yes. On that note, Gore only carried the ball 12 times for 63 yards, and this week they go back up against Seattle. I I have nothing.
I have a hard time not ranking. I mean, there's a starter, right? So it's like he's still out of the starting lineup, but I can't rank a third string running back above Frank Gore.
And I understand that, but I will say that last time Gore rushed for 28 yards against Seattle.
It's brutal.
Carlos Hyde rushed for 19. So
there's that.
There you go. Anquan Bolden held to 3 of 5 for 18 yards the last time that they met. Last week he was 4 of 9 for 54 yards. He's not the problem, but sadly you just can't play him unless you're in a super duper crazy deep PPR league. And everyone else is on the bench, and I'm saying especially Colin Kaepernick and Vernon Davis. I just want to point out again, he hasn't scored since week 1, and he hasn't gone over 30 yards since week 2.
So sad.
Seahawks. Oh, I was gonna say. Oh, we're on to the Seahawks. Oh yeah, I cover them too. This is really easy. Russell Wilson, ballin' per usual. Another 48 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown. This guy is consistent. Marshawn Lynch, always. He lost a fumble last week, but who cares? Stephen Hauschka, the man.
The man.
Seattle defense.
Mystery. The mustard.
Right? Stephen Hauschka is like one of my favorites. Seattle defense coming back strong at the end of the year, playing against San Francisco. Go for it. Got calls. I'm going to give you Doug Baldwin just because I'm feeling generous today. He can't seem to string 2 good games together, and unfortunately he had a good game last week, so it doesn't look good for this week. But I just don't think they'll need him. But he was last week 5 of 7 for 97 yards and a touchdown, one of his better games. And then bench performers is everyone else.
Everyone else.
Are we concerned of a blowout situation and people being benched?
No, because the only people you're playing are Russell Wilson and Marshawn Lynch, and they'll get enough
that's true.
before they get benched no matter what.
Yeah.
Even Robert Turbin had his breakout game. Marshawn Lynch still had 18 points in standard.
So we're not worried.
Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys 9-4. The Philadelphia Eagles 9-4. This is a game, folks. The Cowboys.
Another Thanksgiving rematch.
Little Thanksgiving rematch. The Cowboys. Murray rushed 32 times last week. All my husband could say is the Cowboys are running him into the ground, and they're not going to use him next year. And it made me really sad, and I hope that's not true because he is fantastic. He had 9 receptions for another 49 yards. In PPR, I can't even count that high. It's amazing.
I can't even count that high. Ask your daughter. She's good at it.
Yeah. Oh, mustard. Des Bryant. Ooh, last week was the Murray show and a little bit of the Beasley show. This week's going to be the Bryant show. I can just feel it. Philly gives it the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers, and I just feel like it's his time where he's going to start throwing fits on the bench, and nobody wants that. Tony Romo, start him, you guys. Philly gives it the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. This is going to be a shootout. This is going to be a good time. I'm really excited to watch this. It's going to be awesome. Gut calls. Cole Beasley. Now, this is the deal, you guys. You got a lot of points, 42 yards and 2 touchdowns. But that was off of 3 receptions. It's too risky for playoffs.
Too risky.
If he doesn't find the end zone, you guys, he might get you 1.2 points. I mean, that's it. So, just, buyer beware, not my favorite. Jason Witten, he hasn't done much in the last 2 weeks at all, and this is a tough matchup. They give up the 7th fewest points to tight ends. I don't love him. And unfortunately, on my bench, I have to put Terrence Williams. 'Tis the time. He wasn't even targeted once last week. Sad.
T. Willie, you're done.
And that's not the first time this season that he's had 0 targets.
Yeah, that's right.
Boom. Eagles, LaShawn McCoy, 50 yards and a fumble last week. He's another guy. Everyone was so busy yelling about the Broncos and the Saints that no one paid attention to the fact that McCoy stunk it up.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's okay. Dallas gives up the 15th most points to running backs. They need to bounce back. And last week they went up against Seattle. Seattle's a really tough team. So 2 weeks ago in Dallas, McCoy rushed for 159 yards, a season high, and a touchdown. So I think we're going to go back in that direction again. Yay.
McCoy does well when in the big lights too. Sunday night game. I think he'll do well.
It's a primetime game. It's a rematch. It's a divisional game. I like all the components here for everyone, really. Speaking of, Jerry Maclin and Jordan Matthews. Jordan Matthews is probable with a knee, but he should be fine. Defense is starting to catch on to him, though. And against Dallas on Thanksgiving, again, 4 of his 5 targets for 51 yards and a touchdown. Meanwhile, Maclin isn't getting his gaudy early season numbers, but he is holding steady. Last week he caught 3 of 6 targets for 21 yards and a touchdown against Seattle, which is pretty okay against Seattle. Richard Sherman was on him a lot of the time, so I was actually pretty impressed with what was going on. Dallas gives up the 8th fewest points to wide receivers, which might be a little surprising, but I think that they're still considerably easier than Seattle, and I feel like they'll be fine. You also play Cody Parkey, and you play Philadelphia Eagles defense. You're saying, but Brandon, you just told us that Dallas is going to be really excited and whatever. Yeah, but Philly still scores. They're just crazy. They've only had 1 bad game. It's nuts. Yeah. Mark Sanchez, we have him ranked number 13 because, once again, Dallas gives up the 11th most points to quarterbacks. Chip Kelly, that's really what I'm going to say. Once again, Seattle, ugh. But, other than that, he's been throwing like almost 300 yards each time that he goes out. It's crazy. And the real news here is that Foles could be back in Week 16. So if he doesn't throw for another 300 yards, he might be sitting on the bench next week. Zach Ertz and Brent Selleck, hear me out for a second. Dallas gives up the 4th most points to tight ends. They're going to have to use them. I don't like it. But everyone else is on the bench, per usual.
Monday Night Football. New Orleans Saints 5-8 at Chicago Bears 5-8.
Great. So the Saints, here's the deal. I know everyone's extremely disappointed, and yes, they looked really, really bad, even on the offensive side of the ball, but they are going up against Chicago. I promise you guys, it's going to look up. Drew Brees is going to be fine. And then if he's not, I will never, ever tell you to start him again. No, that's probably a lie. But he should be fine going against Chicago. They gave up the 2nd most points to quarterbacks. Who's not necessarily fine is Mark Ingram. I don't know about this. I mean, last week Ingram rushed for 10 times for 43 yards. He caught 2 passes for 13 yards. And he lost a fumble. And New Orleans is in this committee situation, but not even really. It's just a bad place to run. The line's not doing the work it needs to do. And actually, Chicago is the best against the run, so they might not run that much, which means they're going to use Kenny Stills. We were talking about him earlier in the podcast. He was 3 for 4 for 23 yards performance last week, which was terrible. But 2 weeks ago, he caught 5 of 6 targets for 162 yards and a touchdown. Those are the numbers we want.
And you don't think he's going to be double teamed?
I don't think so, because in the gut calls would be Pierre Thomas, who's a pass-catching running back, Marcus Colston, who just won't go away, and Benjamin Watson, who oddly is a tight end who scores a lot of touchdowns and is getting more work than Jimmy Graham. But we'll talk about Jimmy Graham. You have to play him. I apologize. The Bears are tied for giving up the absolute most points to tight ends. Keep your fingers crossed. And then everyone else is on the bench. But Kyrie Robinson is coming back, but don't play him. And Nick Toon is a guy who plays on the team, but you shouldn't play him either.
He plays on the team, but don't play him.
Right. As far as the Bears are concerned, the huge sad news for the Bears is that Brandon Marshall was placed on IR, ending his season with fractured ribs and a collapsed lung and a broken heart.
And it is really sad news.
It really is
interesting for Alshon Jeffrey owners.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say gut calls Marcus Wilson.
Like it.
And he is a wide receiver that we know nothing about. They have barely used him at all because they weren't using him as that. But all of a sudden there's a starting wide receiver that you can pick up in all of your leagues and you can get in daily for cheap. And the Bears have to throw, and no one plays defense in New Orleans.
And the defense has no game plan for him, so you haven't seen him.
And it's New Orleans. What? Oh, yeah. Don't tell people? Oh, okay. And, so I'm excited about that. And then as far as Martellus Bennett is concerned, listen, I watched Bennett limp that whole last quarter. I don't know how he's still probable with his foot injury, so I would watch the injury report. If he's playing, though, major must start. Matt Forte, major must start. New Orleans is terrible. terrible, no defense. Week 16 he goes against Detroit. I will be singing a different tune, but get it together. Jay Cutler, great. Everyone else on the bench.
Everyone else on the bench. Brandon, thank you for doing that. Speedy Gonzalez, I appreciate you. Everybody check us out at herfantasyfootball.com, on ESPNW, on Facebook /herfantasyfootball, and make sure to chat us up on Twitter at herfantasyfb. We love answering your questions even down to the last minute before we have to set our lineups on Sunday. We appreciate all of you. Good luck at playoffs. Until next time, no more faking it.